Good evening and welcome. My name is Kara Solomon. I'm a conservation coordinator for the North Carolina Wildlife Federation. We are a statewide nonprofit, and our mission is to protect, conserve, and restore wildlife and habitat in North Carolina. So our presentation tonight is very fitting. I have the pleasure to work with a number of our community wildlife chapters. I'm here tonight in Chapel Hill with two of them. I'm here with the Durham Wildlife Stewards and the Tri-County Conservationists. They are both chapters of ours that are doing boots on the ground work for wildlife and habitat in North Carolina. So I'm going to start first by introducing Rob Bickley. She is the president of the Durham Wildlife Stewards. I'll give her a second to talk about that.
Hello, everybody. Is anybody here from Durham? And you're from Durham? Yes. Well, and the rest of you, thank you for being here, because I love to do things with Laura, our two chapters together, because what a combined power we can be. And I'm looking forward to Rachelle's talk. I just got my own yard certified. Yay. And my eco restoration project in my HOA. Yay. So what a wonderful thing to do, this habitat program. If you'd be interested in knowing more about the Durham Wildlife Stewards, just look us up online or come talk to me. And Laura, of course, is a river run leader of the other Chapel Hill, Chatham County, and Orange County Tri-County Conservationists. Thank you so much.
Hey, I'm Laura Kiefer. I'm the president of the Tri-County Conservationists. We're Orange County, Chatham County, and Alamance County.
Sorry.
And yeah, it's hard to remember. And we focus on helping wildlife locally, basically restoring habitat. So doing educational programs like this one tonight, removing invasive plants, and then sometimes planting natives back in. We partner with a lot of organizations. One of them is the town of Chapel Hill. So we've done a lot of work in Bowling Creek, removing invasives and planting natives. We're working at the Chapel Hill Community Center. We've removed invasives, and this fall we'll be doing a pollinator planting there. We also have partnered with Friends of the Lower Haw River in Chatham County at their Bynum Mill access area, removing invasives and helping them with their pollinator garden across the street on 15501. Another organization we partner with is Triangle Land Conservancy, both in Chatham County and Orange County, in Brumley Forest, and in land further down south of Pittsboro, actually, removing invasive plants. We are lucky enough, there are 10 of us chapter leaders in the chapter, and we are lucky enough to have Stephen Feuerston as being one of those. He is the initiator of his Rewild Earth organization. He is like a one-man wonder of removing invasive plants. He's been doing this for years, 5 or 6 days a week. And now he has a lot of followers. He has a lot of people willing to help him remove invasive plants all in the surrounding area. This fall, we're working on a restoration project in Brumley North and South, I think, Brumley Forest in Orange County. It's Triangle Land Conservancy land. So in collaboration with Rewild Earth and Triangle Land Conservancy, Stephen has found 7 different sites. He's calling them oases for restoration projects, where we'll remove invasives and then plant really densely native trees and shrubs. And we're getting those trees and shrubs from Project Pando. Some of you may know Project Pando. They are the nonprofit arm of the tree care company Leaf and Limb in Raleigh. And so what Project Pando does is they collect native seeds from the community. So they ask the community to collect native seed, they drop them off, and then Project Pando grows them for about a year until they're ready to give away. They grow them in air planters, and they describe on their website how they make these things. And so they're trying to scale up this year. They're asking for community member help. So if anybody is interested in collecting seed for Project Pando, they would be happy to take the seed. They're working as a seed hub now. So we're working with them this fall on these restoration projects. If you would like to help us, that would be great. If you'd like to learn more about the chapter, just come see me afterward. And now I'll switch to introducing our guest speaker tonight, Rachelle. Rachelle Roake is a registered landscape designer. She has a company called Reconnect Landscapes. She's a board member of the New Hope Bird Alliance and a very active member of the New Hope Bird Alliance. So the first time I met Rachelle was when I got a very friendly, inviting email from her when I asked to be part of the conservation committee with the New Hope Bird Alliance. There's a lot of very experienced, knowledgeable people on that committee. So I was very grateful to have her warm email and her smiling face. The second time I met Rachelle was when she gave a presentation about bird-friendly yard habitat in the spring. And Ra and I liked her presentation so much that we decided to invite her to give a talk for our chapters, and that's why we're here. The third time I saw Rachelle, she was the volunteer plant expert coming out to my yard for part of the New Hope Bird Alliance bird-friendly yard certification program. So not only did Rachelle list and identify all of the many native plants and trees growing in my yard, but she also identified wildlife. She's like, oh, look, there's a fledgling brown thrasher taking a dust bath there. I was completely oblivious. And oh, look, there's a so-and-so caterpillar on my coral honeysuckle. Never occurred to me to look for that. So anyway, I think you'll be very pleased to hear Rachelle's talk tonight. She is very lovely and very extremely knowledgeable. So with that, I welcome Rachelle.
And before we begin, we will have a section for questions at the end. For the people that are in the room, I'll run around with the microphone to answer any questions that you might have. If you're online, please type your questions in the chat and I will get them read for you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Laura, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. That was very sweet. My name is Rachelle Roake, and I'm really excited to be here with you tonight. Thank you all for coming out. I'm really looking forward to giving you some tips on how to create safe, functional, beautiful bird habitat. So as Laura mentioned, I'm a volunteer board member for the New Hope Bird Alliance. We are the local volunteer chapter of the National Audubon Society, and we represent about 2,300 members across Chatham, Durham, and Orange counties. We're an all-volunteer organization. We have a great team. We do a lot of work, and our two most popular programs are all around education and our bird outings. So we do a lot of adult and youth programming. We table at events, and we also hold monthly free educational programming every first Thursday of the month at the Botanic Garden. That's at 7 p.m. and it's just great educational talks about birds, environmental topics. It's free for anyone to attend. We also host 2 bird outings a week. We love beginner birders. We have a walk every Wednesday and then one day on the weekend, either a Saturday or Sunday. And this upcoming weekend, it's actually a special count on Sunday. We're having our quarterly eagle count at Jordan Lake. And anyone can participate if you like eagles, if you like sitting on a lake in the fall. It's a great time to come out and help us monitor that population. So we're a very active group. I hope you'll come out and come birding with us sometime. So we are a bird conservation group, and so a lot of our work is to help birds and help people connect with birds. And we see depressing numbers and statistics like this every day, and it's very easy to feel hopeless or depressed about this. But we can make a difference. We are not powerless in the face of these statistics. We can change these. So the average American yard is a great place to start. Average American yard has about 60% lawn, a little bit dedicated to food gardens, 20% to impervious surface, so your sidewalks, your roof, your driveway, and 16% to some other, I'm sure, very fun purpose. So there's 40 million acres of lawn in the United States. It's the most irrigated, fertilized crop in the country. So what if we flip these statistics, right? What if we made 60% native habitat and had only 16% lawn? What if we really thought about what we use lawn for, where we want to use it? How much do we really need for the dog to run around, the kids to run around? If we could use lawn as an area rug instead of wall-to-wall carpet, we could do a lot for habitat. There's a lot of potential in our yards. What if our yards look like this, right? The new American dream. So instead of a yard for one, we have a yard for many, a yard that welcomes many organisms and many people. This is very possible, and I'm sure you've seen some of the news headlines. There's a real movement happening across the country. There's a lot more acceptance to this wilder looking aesthetic because it does so much to support biodiversity and capture our imaginations and our hearts. So how do we do this? How do we build a bird sanctuary? Very, very simply, there's 4 things you want to think about. Food, water, structure, and safety. So let's start with food. And with birds, with our songbirds, a lot of that food is native plants. So you want to pick native plants, right? So 96% of North American songbirds feed their young exclusively insects. And the majority of these insects are caterpillars. Why? Because caterpillars are basically living jars of baby food, right? They're these squishy sausages that the parents can just shove down the throat of their babies and just get on with their day. And it's important that this is an efficient process because these parent birds are collecting thousands of caterpillars to raise one clutch of birds. So that's hundreds of bugs a day they need to find for their young. Where are they finding these bugs? It's on native plants. So the work of Doug Tallamy and his lab found that native plants support 35 times more caterpillar biomass than non-native plants. 35 times more. So this is why it's important that we are planting our native plants so that we are supporting our caterpillars and we are supporting our birds. But there's a lot of native plants out there, right? How do we select which native plants we should plant in our yards? Well, you can start with keystone species. 90% of what caterpillars eat is created by only 14% of native plant species. So a very small portion of the native plants that are out there are supporting the majority of insect life. And we call that 14%, the select native plants, we call those keystone species. So if you think of a stone arch, right? You have the keystone in the middle. That keystone is holding up the entire weight of the arch, and that's what a keystone plant does. It holds up the entire ecosystem. So keystone plants are the native plants that provide a critical source of food for other species. And which plants are keystone species? That's the next question. I just want to run through a few of the top keystones. So the #1 keystone species for our area is oaks, or quercus if you're fancy. And the oaks are a larval host plant for almost 500 species of caterpillars in our area. And here we have a picture of the scarlet oak, and we have a gorgeous golden-winged warbler looking for all those bugs. Has anyone here seen a golden-winged warbler? Oh, well, you need to come on a bird outing with the New Hope Bird Alliance. It's a tricky bird to find, but I did see one at Brumley North this spring. Coming in at #2, top 2 keystone species is cherries, plums. It's a larval host plant for nearly 400 caterpillar species. And here we have the beautiful male rose-breasted grosbeak, Sudan black cherry, which is a wonderful canopy tree. Birch is coming up next. It's a larval host plant for nearly 300 caterpillar species, and there's a pair of yellow-bellied sapsuckers here. We have the adult male on the left and a juvenile on the right. And this birch is doing a wonderful thing here. This picture is emphasizing that while keystone species are really important, the ability of a plant to support caterpillars is important. Plants do a lot of other really cool things, really important things in the environment, and this birch is a wonderful plant for producing sap and sugary sap. And here we have the sapsuckers that drill these beautiful patterns in the bark, and they access that sap. Willows are up next. They support, again, almost 300 different caterpillar species, and we have a yellow warbler, a male yellow warbler here. In the spring, you can see these are all the willow flowers. And rounding out the top 5 are maples. We love our maples. And they support around 250 caterpillar species, and this is a magnolia warbler on box elder. An underappreciated native tree. And the flower, it is in the Acer family, and the flowers are just gorgeous. So there are many, many keystone plants out there, and the National Wildlife Federation Plant Finder is a great place to find a whole list for your area. You can type in your zip code, and it'll give you a list of plants that are good fit for your area. And the New Hope Bird Alliance has referenced this material, and we've come up with a list of plants that are good for the Piedmont. I have a few printed copies here. You can also find this on our website. We've gone through and selected the plants that are good for the Piedmont, and we've also added things like what kind of light does it need, what kind of soil, water, all the growing conditions as well. So we've kind of combined that into one large spreadsheet. If you're into spreadsheets, highly recommend. All right, so you're thinking about keystone plants, you're thinking about other species you might want to add. You want to think about adding plants in different layers. So many of you may know that different birds use different habitats, right? If you were looking for a duck, you'd probably go to a lake. If you were looking for a woodpecker, you'd go to a forest. And that concept applies to different vegetation layers as well. So, for example, we have the canopy layer, where you're going to see a lot of mature trees that are supporting birds like owls and woodpeckers, vireos. If you've ever gone birding in the spring, you know warbler neck is a thing, because you're looking up in the canopy and you're trying to see these tiny warblers way up high. And then moving down, you've got mid-story and understory layers, which are really important as well. Many of our birds nest in that kind of mid to low zone, and you're going to see a lot of cardinals, catbirds, wood thrushes are really active in the shrub layer. And then the ground layer, of course. We don't talk about the ground layer enough, but this is a great place to make sure you're leaving your leaves, planting nice ground covers like sedges, and really retaining the soil there. And you'll be supporting birds like towhees and thrushes, everyone who's foraging on the ground for bugs that are in the leaf litter. So by providing more layers in your habitat, you're providing more mini habitats, and you'll be supporting more diversity. I want to talk a minute and just highlight the mighty shrub layer. This is a crucially important layer in our forested habitats and more open habitats as well. Shrubs are really powerhouses, right? They have wonderful flowers, usually in spring, summer, that provide nectar and pollen for insects. Those then blossom into fruits. Our shrubs provide fruits in the summer, early summer, late summer, into the fall, and even the winter, and they have beautiful structure and fall color if you're into the design aspect of it. And unfortunately, looking around our habitats, looking around our neighborhoods, the shrub layer is often missing. And this is a real shame, because it is so important for so many of our species. And why are we missing our shrubs? Largely due to an overpopulation of deer. So I love deer. I don't want to, nothing against deer as a concept, but we do have an overpopulation problem, and they are wreaking havoc on our native plants, especially the shrub layer. So I get a lot of questions about how to deal with deer, and it's very difficult. The deer don't read the manual, and it's really just trying different things, right? Because a deer in your neighborhood might eat something that in another neighborhood or even another yard, they don't eat that. So I would always recommend just a multi-pronged approach, try different things and see what works. Fencing is obviously your, kind of your best option, but to deter a deer, it's got to be, 7, 8 feet tall at least. It's very expensive, and you're also likely excluding a lot of other smaller mammals and turtles that might be wanting to use your yard. Deterrent sprays can also be effective. I always recommend using deterrent sprays when you're planting a new plant or a new garden. They're best at kind of training the deer to not establish in a new foraging location. So again, you're planting a new garden, you want to apply a deterrent spray right away so the deer aren't in there the next day. I like to use I Must Garden. That's a Chapel Hill based company, and it's a delightful smell that doesn't make me want to vomit, and it works pretty well. The Yard Enforcer sprinkler is an example of a motion detection sprinkler. It's got some fancy settings where you can say just operate at night, or only shoot 30 feet. I've heard some people have really good luck with setting up an array of Yard Enforcer sprinklers. You can also plant defensively. So oftentimes, I'm guilty of this. I buy one new plant at the store, and I'm just going to try that one plant and see how it does. And then the deer come immediately to that one plant, because that's what they do. No matter what it is, they're like a toddler. They're going to put it in their mouths. They're going to try it once, and they might eliminate that plant on the first shot. So planting defensively is one strategy to try. So planting a group of things, not just one, and also thinking about planting plants that the deer don't like as much with plants they might like a little bit more. So using more grasses, using more sedges, maybe some yucca, some things that they don't like as much. If you plant that with another plant, near another plant, that can help. You're making it a little more tricky for them, right? They don't want to get 2 plants in their mouths, one that they like, one that they don't like. So mints and things as well, you can plant with more tasty plants. And tree tubes are really helpful for seedlings, bare root trees and shrubs, so your woody plants. If you go to, say, your conservation district or forest service that do a spring plant sale or fall plant sale that's bare root woody plants, you'll get a big bag of 20, 30, 50 bare root trees. It's a great way to get affordable plants. And then you want to put this tree tube around it, and it's just a plastic tube. It's semi-transparent, so light can go through, and the tree can use that light. But the most light is at the top of the tube, right? So it really encourages upward straight growth as well of those woody plants, and it also protects them from deer browse. And then when it gets tall enough where the tree pops out of the top, you can take that tree tube off, and you kind of assume that it's big enough to handle a little bit of browse. Ra, you have a question?
Fencing versus tree tubes, is there one versus the other? Is one better? So you're fencing around a plant like a little,
Fencing around an individual plant versus tree tubes.
Right.
I mean, it's more expensive for sure, and more labor intensive to go around and manually build your little fence around each one. So the tree tubes are more economical if you have that small sapling. All right, getting back to the plants. So we talked about shrubs. I really want to encourage everyone to regenerate their shrub layer. Now you know how to protect it from deer. What should you plant? This time of year, we're thinking about fall migration. Birds are migratory birds are moving south. They're leaving us, but they're going on a very difficult journey, right? It's energetically expensive. It's very dangerous. Could you, in your yard, provide a refueling station, a safe pit stop, or a gas station for them on their journey south? Yes, you can do that by planting shrubs. Fall berry producing shrubs in particular are really important for migrating birds. These berries are high in sugars and fats and carbohydrates. And these are some of the top shrubs that I'd recommend. So you've got arrowwood, viburnum, wax myrtle, which is also an evergreen plant. Virginia creeper is a beautiful vine, and you might already have it growing along your woodland edge. Sassafras is a great small tree, kind of clonal, that produces great berries that you probably will never see because the birds always eat them up too fast. Spice bush, the beautiful bright red berries have a very high lipid content, which is excellent for migrating birds, and they are beloved by wood thrushes. Everyone loves a wood thrush. And then I have to give a shout out to pokeweed, a plant that everyone hates, but it has wonderful berries that kind of dry up like little raisins, and it's a great later season food source for the birds. And here we have this gorgeous black-throated blue warbler eating the beauty berries, the Native American beauty berries. And if we're thinking about birds flying south, we got to think about when birds come back north in the spring. So a whole different group of species becomes important as birds are moving north in the spring. And you'll see some familiar plants that I mentioned earlier, because in the spring, a lot of the birds are refueling on insects, so they become very important. And so you'll see some of the keystone species that I mentioned before also being very important in the spring. So oaks, maples, tulip poplars, these are plants that are all blooming in the early spring at the exact time that the birds are migrating back. Has anyone seen a tulip poplar flower? Yes, it's beautiful. And these are really lovely, even though they're very high up. They have that lovely tulip cup shape, and that cup generates a lot of heat in the spring when it's cold. It kind of captures heat in its little cup shape, and that heat really attracts a lot of insects to the flowers. And where you have a lot of insects, you have a lot of birds. So tulip poplar is always a wonderful plant in spring to watch for migrating birds. Eastern red cedar is also great. It's evergreen. If there are berries still on it, it's also a good food source and cover source. And then wild columbine, of course. Many people know the story, but the columbines bloom right when the ruby-throated hummingbirds are migrating back, because the hummingbirds are the flower's perfect pollinator. So you see these long tubes here with the nectar at the very end. It's the perfect fit for a ruby-throated hummingbird. Water is also really important. We want to make sure we have fresh water available for our birds, keep it clean. So if you have a bird bath, you want to try to clean it once a week with a nice solution of 9 parts water to 1 part vinegar. That's one way you can keep it clean. Give it a nice scrub. And you want to use some water wigglers or mosquito dunks if you have concerns about mosquitoes. Are people familiar with mosquito dunks? Yes, super. If you're not, these are small tablets that you can usually get at a hardware store or online. You put these tablets in your water. It contains a bacteria that affects only Diptera larvae. So only larvae of mosquitoes, kills that larvae, the mosquito larvae, and it's safe for other birds and creatures to drink that water as well. So it's a great way to get rid of mosquitoes without pesticides, and keep your bird bath mosquito free. Wrapping up the talk about habitat structure, dead trees are really important for wildlife. And then if you go to wildlife school, they will tell you all about dead snags as a really critically important wildlife habitat structure. So here we have pileated woodpeckers, and our woodpeckers are primary cavity nesters. So that means that they have the equipment to create their own nesting cavity, and they will do that every year. It's part of their breeding activity to build a new nest cavity every year. Primary cavity nesters are, in contrast, there are secondary cavity nesters. So those are birds who do not have the equipment to create their own cavity, and so they move into old woodpecker holes. And some of our most beloved secondary cavity nesters include bluebirds and chickadees and titmice and wood ducks and all sorts of beautiful birds. But if you have a dead tree in your yard, congratulations. As long as it's not a hazard to anyone's health and safety, I really encourage you to leave it up. And if you have to remove it, when you have your arborist out to do some trimming or remove it, ask them just to top off the top. Just give it a little trim and leave that trunk for the wildlife. Ra, we have a question.
Oh, if we leave a snag, I've got a dead tree right now.
Oh, yeah.
What's the optimal, what's the shortest you might want to cut it off, but still leave a snag?
Yes, I am not sure. I don't know if there's an optimal minimum height for a snag, because I've seen some birds using pretty small stumps. I mean, no matter what height it is, someone's going to use it for a food source, right? For nesting, I'm sure it needs to be a certain height, maybe like 2 human heights, like 12 feet perhaps, seems like a good height. But whatever's high enough where you've removed your concern about safety, but you can still leave that remainder up. I'm going to look that up. That's a good question. So to support our secondary cavity nesters, you can become a bird landlord. So putting up a nest box is a great way to support the birds in your yard and also get up close and personal, learn something about your birds. And it is like becoming a landlord, right? It's not a set it and forget it project. It's important to keep an eye on this box. It's important to maintain it, keep it clean, make sure that it's not leaking or falling over, make sure it's protected from predators. So I want to talk about 2 species that the Bird Alliance helps to support, and that's the eastern bluebird and the brown-headed nuthatch. So 2 birds, secondary cavity nesters, who really need and will use these nest boxes. So for the bluebird, the entrance hole is about 1.5 inches in diameter. It's a bigger bird. Their preferred habitats are open meadow, open woods, kind of the edge of the woods, and you want to space them around 300 feet apart. They're pretty territorial. If you've ever met a bluebird, you probably know this. And so keeping those houses 300 feet apart will kind of minimize disputes and maximize your success. The brown-headed nuthatch, much smaller bird, and only requires a 1-inch diameter hole, so very small. And it's important to put these smaller boxes with smaller openings out for the smaller birds because it'll keep out the bluebirds, right? The hole is not big enough for a large bluebird to fit in, so it kind of gives the smaller birds a chance. We sell both of these houses as part of the New Hope Bird Alliance, if you're interested. And the houses that the Bird Alliance sells actually have a 1 1/8 inch hole. And that is to support both nuthatches, but also allow chickadees to nest in there as well. So if you just have a 1 1/8 inch opening, you can also support chickadees, which are a common bird that's also declining. For the nuthatches, though, you should put the box near mature pine trees. That's their preferred, their main foraging habitat, and they require a pretty large habitat size. So 1 box per 6 acres is recommended. And if you're into building boxes, or maybe if you're an engineer, and Laura has a question.
I was just going to say, you can actually buy metal covers with the different size holes. So you don't have to buy all these different bird houses. You can just put the different metal cover on, which I learned recently, the different sizes.
That's a great point, Laura. Thank you so much. You can buy, I think it's called a reducer
Excluder.
or an excluder. Yeah, if it's a smaller hole, it can be an excluder as well. And this is a metal or a wooden plate that you'll put on top of the opening that'll reduce the size of the opening. So
They're cheap.
and they're much cheaper than buying another box. We have another question?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, obviously you don't put two bluebird birdhouses near each other, but
Right.
say, could you do 1 1/2 inch and 1 1-inch birdhouse?
Yes, you totally can mix and match. So you can have 1 bluebird house and then a smaller opening house for your smaller birds. And the bluebirds will try to defend that smaller house, but especially if you can put a little bit of visual barrier between those, you'll have the best success. But they have done studies and shown that you can actually put them quite close together and have pretty good success in both. Great thinking. So if this sounds at all interesting, you can do a real deep dive at nestwatch.org. It's a Cornell Lab of Ornithology resource. So there's a huge variety of different box styles and different box openings, as well as habitat types. So those are the three things that kind of determine which birds you might be able to attract with your box. And you can go to this website, you can put in your location and your habitat type, and it will give you a list of likely birds you could attract and all sorts of construction plans for these different boxes. So great for the builder in your life. And if you put up a box, it's important to think about predators, right? I think every single person who puts up a box gets a snake, right? So a couple of ways that you can deter snakes, even though we love snakes. You can put your box on a very slender, slippery pole. So a 1-inch conduit pipe is a great option. You can get that at a hardware store. You can get it cut to size. And you mount that on the back of the box with little electrical pipe brackets. And then you can put up a baffle, right? A baffle is a physical barrier that prevents a predator from climbing up the pole. And here we have a plan for a stovepipe style baffle, which you can find on nestwatch.org. It costs about $15 to build this. It's very affordable and it's very effective. When you're talking about birds, you got to talk about feeding the birds. People ask a lot if it's okay for them to feed birds, and I say yes, like definitely feed the birds, in addition to providing native plants and building habitat. 2 reasons why I support bird feeding. One, if you look around, we don't have a lot of native plants and native habitat. There's not enough, I feel, to support birds fully. So by feeding them, you're supplementing that diet. And number 2, it's just fun. It really builds our connection to birds. We really start to identify who's there. We start to connect with them like, oh, that's my chickadee, and I got to take care of my titmice. So we're building connections. We're enjoying our time with birds. Ruby-throated hummingbirds are a great bird to feed, and I would encourage you to make your own hummingbird nectar with a mix of 4 parts water to 1 part sugar, no red dye needed. And we want to keep these feeders clean too, right? It's really hard in the summer. It gets hot, it gets a little grimy in there. So clean these out. It's recommended every 2 days in the summer. Just switch out that sugar water. So along with habitat, the diversity of habitats you have, the diversity of birds you can support, same thing applies with feeding and feeding birds. The more diversity you can provide with your food types and feeder types, the greater diversity of birds you will attract. This is another beautiful graphic from Cornell, and this is actually from Feeder Watch, another great group, great project. But if you're going to invest in 2 types of food, I would highly recommend the black oil sunflower seed and suet. This just really all around attracts a good variety of birds. And if you want to get into the specialty stuff, that's kind of like level 2 bird feeding. And I also want to mention that the New Hope Bird Alliance is having their annual bird seed sale fundraiser. So if you're interested in supporting the organization and getting your bird seed, check out our website. And if you put up a bird feeder, you will get squirrels. That's guaranteed. So the way to deter squirrels, discourage the squirrels, is to think like a squirrel, right? How high can they jump? How far horizontally can they jump? So positioning your feeder outside of that jumping range is your best bet. So you want to have your feeders on a really tall pole, and you want to have the top of your baffle, that's that stovepipe baffle again, top of the baffle is at least 6 feet off the ground so that a squirrel can't jump on top. And you want to keep it at least 8 feet away from a branch or a tree trunk or any place where it could jump horizontally. And if that The other key with the stovepipe baffle is that it's not attached firmly to the pole. It's loosely attached so that it swings back and forth. So the squirrel is going to jump on that baffle. It's going to swing. Squirrel falls. These are my best recommendations. These are the hot tips I've brought for you tonight. All right, so we've gone through a lot of different ways to bring birds into our yards. And if we're bringing birds into our yards, we want to make sure that the yard is safe. We want to reduce any hazards. We want to avoid creating what's called an ecological trap, which is a place that looks good, might smell good, might even taste good, but in the long run, it's really going to kill us. So cats, huge threat to birds. And I love cats. I love cats so much. I love your cat. And I want it to live a long and happy life indoors. So it's best for the cats. It's best for the birds. We want to keep those cats inside. We also want to just say no to pesticides. A lot of pesticide use going on in the world today. And as educated consumers, we can speak with our dollars, we can speak with our voices, we can ask questions, and we can help change this culture of using a lot of pesticides. So how many folks in here are familiar with the word neonicotinoid, neonics? We've heard it. Okay, good, good. This is good. So neonics is a group of systemic pesticides. And that means that this is a pesticide that is applied to the surface of the plant, it's applied to the soil, and then the plant takes up that chemical into its tissues. And every leaf, every bit of nectar, every bit of pollen now contains that pesticide. So this is really a problem when it is used in the nursery trade, because nurseries want to sell you a perfect plant. And to get a perfect plant, they need to apply pesticides often to keep the insects from eating it. If the nursery is using a systemic pesticide as their pest control, that pesticide remains in the plants that they sell for months after you take it home. So if you buy a plant from a box store, let's say you buy a milkweed from a big box store or someplace that uses neonics. If they use neonics on a plant, you take it home, you might be accidentally killing the monarch caterpillars that you're hoping to support. So it's a big problem, but we can help by going to nurseries and asking for plants that have not been treated with pesticides. And the nursery staff person you ask probably will not know the answer, but again, you're voicing that this is something that matters to you and that will eventually make its way to the owner. Mosquito spraying is also something we really want to avoid doing. Really need to get this out of our neighborhoods. So this is a pesticide spray that will kill all of the pollinators. So it's not targeted to just mosquitoes, unfortunately. It will kill all insects. And there's drift involved. If your neighbor sprays, it will often drift into your yard as well. And the spraying is often done when mosquitoes aren't super active. So it's done during the day, and mosquitoes are most active, morning and dusk and night. And it's also treating the adult mosquitoes. So it's not as effective as treating the larva of the mosquito. And the best way to do that is with a mosquito dunk that we talked about earlier. So now you're educated consumers. I hope you'll voice your opinions, use your dollars to shop at places where they do not use neonics and systemic pesticides. New Hope Bird Alliance has done some of this homework for you. We've talked to nurseries in our area and come up with a list of nurseries who pledge not to use systemic pesticides. So check out our website if you want to see a good shopping list. Reducing light pollution is also really important for birds. Birds are attracted to the lights, especially during migration. They're attracted to lights. They become trapped in lights if they're very strong, and this will disorient them, it will exhaust them, and it can eventually lead them into cities or areas where there's more glass. So they're exhausted, they're confused, and it often ends up with more birds hitting glass after they've interacted with urban light pollution. So this is an image of the 9/11 memorial contribute in light, and these are two very powerful beams of light that are shot up into the sky in memoriam. But unfortunately, that's a huge problem for migrating birds. So this is in New York City, and up to 16,000 birds can become trapped in these beams of light at one time. So this is an extreme example, but reducing the urban light pollution, the light pollution from our homes, is also really important. So lights out for birds is encouraged between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. during spring and fall migration, which is right now. And I'm really happy to report that the Chapel Hill Library has pledged this fall to turn off their lights at night for migratory birds. So we're very pleased about that. And this is something we can do at home, we can do in our businesses, we can encourage others to do it as well. So if you have to use lighting at night, obviously we encourage you to turn that off. That's your number one best option. Second best option is to set outdoor lights on motion sensors. So it only turns on when the bad guys are coming. Third best option is to use what are called full cutoff fixtures, or fixtures that are pointed downwards. And you can find examples of this type of lighting at darkskies.org. They do a lot of work with reducing light pollution. And then you can also use warm light sources, more of a yellow tinted bulb, which is less impactful to our birds and our moths and our other wildlife. Glass is another major hazard. How many people up here have heard that thump? Yeah, I know, it's awful. It's awful. Oh, the cats go running when they hear the thump. That's a nightmare. That's a double nightmare. So a new study just came out. Unfortunately, they found that even more birds are killed by glass than we previously expected. So billions of birds each year are killed by glass collisions. What can we do? This is a problem that's not limited to just really tall, large buildings. Many birds die at our residences. So why do these bird strikes happen? Understanding why is a really important first step. And for our homes, the main issue are outside reflections. So a bird will see the image of a nearby tree or a shrub reflected on the outside of the glass. The bird does not understand what glass is. They see that image and they think it's a real tree. They will try to land on it, and that's the main reason why birds interact with glass. There's also an issue of fly-throughs. So if you go through a double glass atrium, a double glass walkway, you have two panes of glass that are very close to each other, and a bird can see right through both panes. Again, they can't perceive that there's glass. They just see the open sky or the plants on the other side, and they will try to fly through that. And then night lighting, again, it confuses birds. It attracts birds to areas where there is a lot of glass, and that compounds the problem. So what can we do? How can you help? Treat your windows on the outside of the glass. That's very important to break up that image of vegetation that's reflected on the outside of the glass. Stole this image from the American Bird Conservancy, and you can't see that I did say that. I swear I had American Bird Conservancy on the bottom. So American Bird Conservancy is a wonderful place to learn about different options for preventing bird collisions. A couple options here. All the way on the left are the Acopian bird savers. These are cords. You can also do chains or some sort of hanging material, and you just hang this at 4 inches apart minimum, but 2 inches apart is recommended. The rule here for applying these treatments to your windows is a 2-inch by 2-inch rule. That's the best way you can prevent bird collisions. So you want these treatments to be no higher than 2 inches apart and no wider than 2 inches apart. And that prevents even the smallest birds from thinking they could get around whatever decal you put on the outside. Feather-friendly dots are very effective. I have them on my home. They're, again, 2 inches apart, each dot 2 inches apart. And the ABC bird tape also effective. It's just a roll of tape that you can do diagonally, you can do vertically, but again, you want to keep it 2 inches apart. And if you just have one problem window, you can also try temporary paint solutions. So there's washable, like Sharpie markers or tempera paint or whatever you use to write "just married" on the back of a car. You can use that on your window to break up that reflection. So if any of this sounded exciting to you, if you would like very lovely people to come to your yard and identify all the plants for you, native, non-native, give you personalized recommendations for how to make your yard bird friendly, recommend you check out the Bird Friendly Habitat Certification Program run by New Hope Bird Alliance. We've been doing this for 10 years. We're all volunteers. We love what we do. For $50, you get an in-person consultation, 2 hours, 2 experts come to your home. We've got a couple people in the audience who volunteer and who also have their yard certified. It's a wonderful program. We give you really achievable goals. We're very encouraging, and our season ends November 2nd. So if you want us to come to your yard, please sign up soon. I just want to leave you with this: garden as if life depends on it, because it really does. Thank you so much for having me. I'll take any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'm seeing some questions here in the room, so I will go run the mic to you. Please speak in the mic, and I will start reading questions that come in online. So if you're online, go ahead and type your question in the chat.
Yeah, my name's Rachelle Roake. I'm actually a certified garden, also a nursery as well. Another good source for nursery for native plants.
Yes.
The North Carolina Native Plant Society has an excellent list, and also they will be at the state fair, and so there'll be a state fair booth, and they'll be giving out plants if you join, and we'll also have a native plant.
I have a couple of questions. First of all, I went to a lecture on sedges at the Botanical Garden. I got all excited. And then I read a little more at home, and it sounded as if the sedges would seed everywhere. And then I got scared and I didn't buy any. And so am I right or am I wrong? In people's yards, they always look so nicely isolated from each other, but the books make it sound different.
Plants can do it all, they're really amazing, but some of them do seed, some of them are a little more, a little less aggressive, right? Plants are always kind of on that spectrum of some of them are aggressive, some of them, and that can be useful, right? Being aggressive is a bad thing. And some of them are more self-contained. So I would recommend, did you give the Mount Cuba website a look? Does that sound familiar?
Doesn't sound familiar.
Okay, Mount Cuba is an excellent resource. They're in Delaware. It's a botanic garden, and they do a wonderful plant trials. They focus a lot on native plants. And recently they released a 5-year study on sedges. They go through many, many species, and they'll tell you if it's a spreader or a clumper. And so the sedges can spread, through seeds, but they really spread a lot via roots or rhizomes as well. So if you're looking for a sedge that kind of stays put, I would lean more towards the clumpers. But just try a few things. You never know, because each site is so different. Something that might run rampant on one in their yard might not do that in your yard. So just do some experiments. I would not shy away from sedges. I think they're absolutely wonderful, very useful. I would try.
Okay.
They're also good for wet areas, because most of the sedges like damp conditions and heavy shade. So if you've got that problem area, that's a great solution.
Definitely.
My other question is, I had the sad experience many springs of putting new plants in the ground and then having the rabbits eat them all down to those. Is there like a deer repellent for rabbits? And do you just spray it on every few days until the plant gets a certain size?
Yeah, you know what to do. Yeah, the Imus Garden brand that I referenced, they also have a line for rabbits and other creatures. So you can try that. You also might want to do some temporary fencing around a young plant, around plants in spring when they're really vulnerable and really tasty. So if you can get your plant past that first period, past that spring, they'll have a better chance. That's when they're the most vulnerable. And even if they do nibble it a little bit, they have some time to recover. But I would do definitely some protection when they're new and in the spring.
Thanks.
I'm not sure. Why did you think of concern?
Did not talk about invasive plants tonight. Okay, vinca is concerned. Vinca, both plants. These are plants that are not native to our continent. These are plants that spread very aggressively and that outcompete our native plants. In addition to that, like I talked about, they don't provide a lot of ecological benefits typically. Our native plants provide greater ecological benefits as well. So with something like vinca, it's a vine, it's a creepy crawly ground cover vine, which is why everyone loves it. It's evergreen, it's purple flowers, and it's a lot of great traits. But because of that creepy crawly nature, it just forms a wall, an impenetrable wall that swallows up all of the native plants around it. So it really just greatly reduces the biodiversity in that area. Also, those kind of thick evergreen healthy ground covers also create a very moist habitat that often harbors mosquitoes and other undesirable plant insects as well. So there's a lot of great native ground covers out there that you can try replacing it with.
Like what?
Well, that's a deeper conversation, but depending on, if you've got moist conditions, dry conditions, probably dry shade. Is that what you have?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep the dirt from falling, right?
Oh, you have a
it's
slope.
area and a bit of a hill with water that comes from the neighborhood. I'm just trying to,
Yes. Native grasses, sedges, some sedges, not all the sedges, but those are also really good. You could try, green and gold, a lot of creepy crawlies. You could try, woodland phlox, but you can try some shady asters if it's shady.
And one thing about these and other another problem with them is that they do get into co-op and there's a stretch of the MSD that goes along the the community speedway, and it's just a map. You see the hellboys are starting to show up in Bali right now. So that's aside from what they're doing in your yard, they can also do things in that.
Okay, I'm gonna take a question from online. We had a question about recommendations for a foundation native evergreen shrub, especially an evergreen shrub that's not highly flammable.
That's a really difficult niche. I mean, the evergreens are flammable. I don't have a recommendation for that. If you're worried about, fire safety, I would really limit the vegetation around your home if that's a concern. That's a tough niche.
Thank you. All right. Another question about pre-emergent effects on insects, particularly with Japanese stiltgrass, and someone suggested a pre-emergent. Are you familiar with that?
People might be in the audience might be more familiar with that. I don't know the specific impacts of pre-emergence on insects. Tell me.
I don't know about pre-emergence. I don't, personally, I wouldn't use pre-emergence on stiltgrass. I had a whole area at the back of my house that was, it's how I actually got to natives. So I had an easement at the back of the house that was completely stiltgrass. I mean, it's solid. So what I did was use a grass herbicide that was specific to summer grasses. And I've also heard you can use a very, very dilute glyphosate, but that will also kill off things. But the beauty of a grass herbicide is when I did that, all the natives in the seed bank started popping up. So I didn't get any grasses come up, obviously, but they came up later. But what happened was the natives in the seed bank came up because I killed off the stiltgrass, but I wasn't killing off all the dicots. And so I got hypericums come up, I got all sorts of other stuff come up. And that got me interested in natives 6 years ago, that's where I am now. So that's what I would do, and I treated it twice a year, and you know, it's a fairly safe herbicide. It's solid for killing Bermuda grass, and you know, it solved the problem in 3 years. I let Bermuda grass kill it. Yeah, that's what I did. If you don't like herbicide, you're going to just be pulling stiltgrass the whole of your life.
Recommendation. Yeah, I would say with any herbicide, just make sure you really read the label, read the impacts, what is it going to kill, what could it harm. Definitely think about its use here with water, which is also often an issue when you're dealing with stiltgrass.
Do we have any other last questions online? Last call, if you have any questions, to go ahead and type them in the chat and I'll get them read. Somebody suggested sea myrtle. That is a late season pollinator plant. Just try not to set it on fire.
Real quick question. Is there any time of year where windows or bird strikes and windows are?
It does seem like bird strikes are more frequent during migration. You just have a lot of birds moving through. So just the likelihood happening. Also, I mean, at least about my experience, whenever a very interesting, desirable plant near my house is blooming or creating berries, and that is reflected in the window, that is a problem. So just locally and then globally, migration is a problem, and then keeping an eye on what your plant surgeries. I know you're doing.
One thing I've noticed is that I don't know any problems with the windows that got screen on.
Right. If you have outdoor screens,
Yeah.
Outdoor screens, it really breaks up that reflection, right? Because it's a really dense screen. Yep. So they don't see reflect. They typically don't see a reflection, and if they do, and they come for a screen, there's usually enough space there between the glass they bounce off.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. I'll send a follow-up email with links to a lot of the things that Rachelle mentioned. Be sure to check out the New Hope Bird Alliance for more information. If you're in the room, we have some materials set up on the table over there. Feel free to help yourself. Go check it out. And yeah, thank you again for joining us tonight. Have a great rest of your day.